Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Thursday, August 20th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. It's day 3 off the state's coronavirus watch list, but now more than 24 elementary schools already have the go-ahead to start in-person learning. Today, San Diego County reported 6 more deaths from the virus and 232 new cases. More schools across the county are preparing to reopen campuses once they get the green light. But as KPBS education reporter Joe Hong tells us, each has its own set of circumstances to consider.
San Diego County is now in its 3rd day of being off the state's monitoring list for counties with high rates of COVID-19 cases. If the county stays off the list for 14 days, then the state will allow schools to reopen. But that doesn't mean they will rush to start in-person instruction. Take the Francis Parker School, a private school in San Diego serving about 1,300 K-12 students. Even if the county meets the state's criteria, it plans to only partially reopen its classrooms on September 8th.
We all want to get this right.
Kevin Yaley is the head of school at the Francis Parker School. He said the school doesn't plan to offer full in-person teaching for the entire school year, even if the county does meet the state's criteria.
The reason why we would not try to return back to normal is because we're still in the middle of a pandemic. And we still have a responsibility to do everything we can while we're in school and while we're shopping at Trader Joe's and while we're walking along the beach.
Francis Parker is one of 27 schools teaching elementary grades that received a waiver from the county to allow in-person teaching. If the county ends up back on the state's monitoring list, the school plans to welcome only its elementary-age students back to campus for hybrid instruction. The Del Mar Union School District also submitted a waiver request and hopes to welcome students back for in-person learning on September 8th. But it'll start its school year fully online next Monday, August 24th. About a third of students and teachers have opted to stay online only, even if the campuses are able to reopen.
This is very challenging, and it hasn't been easy for anyone.
Holly McClurg is the superintendent of the Del Mar Union School District. She said if conditions permit, the district will start in-person instruction on September 8th while still offering a fully online option for the students and teachers who don't feel comfortable coming back to campus.
For whatever reason that those teachers needed to or wanted to actually provide instruction in a distance learning model, we are fortunate that we've got a wonderful teachers who are doing that, as well as our in-person teachers.
Meanwhile, in the South Bay, the Sweetwater Union High School District will continue distance learning until October 2nd. The district serves some of the neighborhoods hit hardest by COVID-19.
It's some cautious optimism that we have.
Manny Rubio is the spokesman for the district.
We're not going to put students at risk, or our staff for that matter. I mean, that's really an important factor, is our staff really has to feel comfortable with doing this as well.
That said, the district does hope to welcome students back to classrooms later in the fall.
Right now, from both students and staff, we're hearing it's not time yet. And so I think we've taken that very, very seriously. We've taken that input very seriously, and we'll keep monitoring.
Joe Hong, KPBS News.
Ride-sharing in California will continue, at least for now. This afternoon, a judge extended a stay to an order which required rideshare companies to classify their drivers as employees rather than independent contractors. KPBS reporter John Carroll talked to a driver who says both the state and the rideshare companies are letting drivers down.
Just hours after Lyft announced it would shut down its service at 11:59 tonight, with Uber expected to follow suit, a reprieve. A judge will allow, for now, rideshare companies to classify their drivers as independent contractors, not employees. Under Assembly Bill 5, which went into effect on January 1st, companies like Uber and Lyft are required to give their drivers benefits like overtime, sick leave, and expense reimbursement.
Like, how am I getting to work? How am I getting to my doctor's appointment? How am I getting to the airport? I have to call, and I have to figure a new system out.
That's the scenario Joe Sescolini feared would play out for riders as of midnight tonight. We spoke with him Thursday afternoon before the stay was issued. Sescolini is unhappy with all sides in this situation. On the one side, he blames what he describes as politicians and unions, but he's not happy with Uber or Lyft either.
They run scare tactics, and that's what we thought this was going to be.
Uber says many drivers want to remain as independent contractors. In a statement, they say they're pleased with the court's action, saying in part, access to these critical services won't be cut off while we continue to advocate for drivers' ability to work with the freedom they want. San Diego Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez, who authored the bill, said in a statement, no one is forcing Uber and Lyft to throw hundreds of thousands of workers out in the cold. App companies have had years to fix this but refuse. Shame on these corporations who are sitting on billions of dollars in cash reserves but are leaving their drivers with nothing. The rideshare companies are due back in court on October 13th. That's just a couple of weeks before the election when voters will decide on Prop 22. If it passes, Uber and Lyft would get an exemption from AB 5. They'd be able to keep classifying their drivers as independent contractors. Joe Sescolini hopes voters approve the measure.
Making us employees is not the answer because it just takes away any independence, any flexibility to what this company was actually based off of. That's why the rates are actually pretty low.
In a couple of months, it will all be up to all of us. John Carroll, KPBS News.
The number of first-time unemployment claims has moved back above the 1 million mark. The U.S. Labor Department reports first-time claims rose to 1.1 last week. Despite some progress being made on the jobs front, the unemployment rate is going up in San Diego County. KPBS reporter Tanya Thorne has the details.
San Diego's unemployment rate climbed to 14.2% in August. That's according to a new report by the San Diego Association of Governments. That's about 200,000 San Diegans out of work. The spike comes after 2 weeks of declining unemployment rates. Ray Major is SANDAG's chief economist. He says that although some progress was made, job availability isn't happening fast enough.
The disturbing part is that we're not going back to work very quickly. And so the numbers seem to have stalled out between the 14 and 15% range.
The hardest hit area is San Diego's Logan Heights neighborhood, where unemployment stands at 18.9%. Many areas like Logan Heights have high unemployment rates because many work in the restaurant and entertainment sectors. Businesses hit hard by the pandemic. Major says people who work in these industries might consider their options.
The ability to move people into jobs will require training programs and retraining.
In Logan Heights, I'm Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
Child care providers will soon be able to apply for grants to cover COVID-19 related costs. The San Diego County Board of Supervisors voted to distribute $25 million in CARES Act money to eligible providers. The San Diego Foundation will also provide an additional $10 million in grants to support children and families and access to affordable child care over the next 5 years.
They have great challenges, limitations in the number of kids, restrictions on how they operate, limitations on parents' ability to pay. And so this $35 million will be directly used to try and get more child care centers up and running to be able to safely care for more children.
In-home daycares can apply for grants of around $3,000, while larger child care centers can get between $100 and $175 per child. The application period will open on Monday through the San Diego Foundation. You'll notice a change the next time you visit the DMV, because as of today, everyone will need to have their temperature checked before their appointment. Employees went down the line with infrared thermometers screening temperatures. They handed out stickers to people under 100.4 degrees. Anyone over that was sent home. It's the latest safety measure in addition to mandatory face masks, social distancing, hand sanitizer, and limited entry. A state bill aiming to give more power to restaurants over delivery services is nearing the governor's desk. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says the pandemic has brought the issue of who gets to deliver a restaurant's food front and center.
Many people stuck at home because of coronavirus have probably had food delivered to their door, not by a restaurant themselves, but by companies like DoorDash or Postmates. But a bill called the Fair Food Delivery Act would prevent restaurants from what some are calling food delivery exploitation.
And the person that picked it up said, oh yeah, we work with Postmates. So I did some investigation. I'm like, we're not on Postmates. How are they selling our food?
Chef Jeff Rossman owns Terra American Bistro in San Diego. He says the delivery service Postmates had listed his restaurant on their app without his permission.
It's not on my behalf. I'm not putting my best foot forward. So as an industry, we were like, that's not cool.
The California Restaurant Association says this has been an ongoing issue and is particularly hitting small businesses hard.
Right now, all the power really is in the hands of these delivery companies.
San Diego Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez authored the Fair Food Delivery Act. She points out some food doesn't travel well and customers will blame the restaurant, not the delivery service, when food arrives cold or soggy.
They think the restaurant itself isn't adhering to the normal level of service when they've never agreed to be in this relationship.
Rossman, who represents the local California Restaurant Association, says the bill gives control back to restaurants.
This bill is really allowing us to recapture the customer and say, hey, you know, we're behind our food. It's our menu that we put on your application. It's not just you picking something that we don't think is going to travel well.
Today, Rossman uses delivery services at his eatery. The Fair Food Delivery Act would mandate food delivery services have an agreement with restaurants in order to work with them. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
A former TV news helicopter pilot from San Diego has died fighting a wildfire near Fresno. 52-year-old Mike Fournier was doing water drops when his helicopter went down. Fournier was working for a Southern California power company at the time. He was a father and former high school football coach in Covina. Nearly 11,000 bolts of lightning have sparked hundreds of fires across California. This fire, known as the CZU August Lightning Complex, is burning in Santa Cruz and San Mateo counties. It's grown to 40,000 acres, forcing thousands to evacuate. Two other giant clusters of fires are burning across 10 counties in Northern California. CAL FIRE San Diego sent 27 engines to help fight the fires, while staffing up at home to make sure we are still covered.
We have the potential to see these fires run in San Diego. We have a lot of the same conditions. We have very dry fields out there. We have the topography that works against us. And ultimately, if we get it in a certain area where we're not able to get a ton of resources on there, we're going to be competing with some of these other fires to get additional firefighting resources there.
CAL FIRE Captain Thomas Schutz says over the next few weeks it will be imperative that any fires that spark are kept small. A local company is getting some attention after unveiling what's being called the largest battery energy storage project in the world. Governor Gavin Newsom among those praising energy infrastructure company LS Power. The Gateway Energy Project in Otay Mesa is currently operating at 230 megawatts and scheduled to reach 250 megawatts by the end of the month. The project will enhance the power grid's reliability and reduce energy costs. LS Power has another battery project in Vista.
Well, the heat continues and the fires continue to burn in parts of California as well. It's going to remain hot. We do have a slight drop in temperature coming up beginning on Friday, but it's only going to be a small shift cooler. I was tempted to type temperatures fall and cooler air returns, but it's just going to be downright hot out there still, just not as hot as it has been. So it still remains a situation where we're dry. Fire danger still an issue. There were some high elevation spots, some parts of the mountains that did pick up more than 2 or 3/10 of an inch of rain back on Wednesday afternoon and evening. But most areas are missing out on any of those stray storms. Excessive heat warnings continue this evening, and the heat will continue through the weekend as well. Daily record highs challenged in various parts of the Southwest, and we'll have that fire danger that remains a big problem for some. In fact, there's a lot of smoke, especially to our north. The bulk of the smoke area with reduced air quality is to our north, but it is a big problem across much of the west with this setup. Overnight tonight, we drop down to 72 in the big city, 66 in Ramona, and 81 for your warm low there in Borrego Springs. We're back up to 109 in Borrego Springs tomorrow. Not quite as hot as it has been, but still very warm. 82 into San Diego. Friday, temperatures about 5 to 10 degrees above average. And this time of the year, 5 to 10 above average is awfully hot. High pressure parked right overhead. And into the weekend we go with the hot weather continuing. Most of the storms are going to be well off to the east into parts of, say, Arizona and New Mexico. So the coastal forecast here, we have mid-80s for the coast Friday and Saturday, a little cooler, low 80s for Sunday, but still very warm into early parts of next week. Inland areas, mid-90s Friday, backing off to near 90 come Tuesday. Still warm, not as hot though. And the mountains will still be 80 plus over the next 5 days, 85 with a stray storm around on Friday. The desert, steamy, still between 107 and 111 over the next 5 afternoons. I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
President Trump's former chief strategist, Steve Bannon, has pleaded not guilty to charges that he ripped off people who thought they were donating to build a border wall. He appeared in federal court today by video conference. Prosecutors in New York say Bannon and 3 other men raised $25 million through the We Build the Wall online crowdfunding. They've been indicted for allegedly taking hundreds of thousands of dollars donated to the group and using it for personal expenses. President Trump talked about Bannon's arrest earlier today.
I feel very badly. I haven't been dealing with him for a long period of time, as most of the people in this room know. He was involved in our campaign. I know nothing about the project other than I didn't like, when I read about it, I didn't like it. I said, this is for government, this isn't for private people.
Bannon was arrested this morning on charges of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and money laundering. Tonight, Joe Biden will accept the Democratic nomination for president. A slate of other prominent politicians, including our governor, are set to appear. Nadia Romero has a preview.
It's a night 32 years in the making.
Well, thank you very, very much. From the bottom of my heart, thank you all.
Joe Biden will officially accept the Democratic Party nomination for President of the United States after running unsuccessfully in the Democratic primaries in 1988 and 2008. The former vice president is proof the third time is the charm.
It's a good night, and it seems to be getting even better.
Tonight, Biden plans to focus less on the opposition and more about rebuilding and setting the nation on a new path.
Given his optimism, I think there's an opportunity for him to give us a vision, his vision of what this country can be if we do prevail in November.
Biden's former speechwriter Dylan Lowy anticipates his old boss will use his storytelling abilities to get that message across.
There's a very powerful story for him to tell there about the incredible progress that we can make if we're able to elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Other speakers to watch, Senator Cory Booker, Pete Buttigieg, Andrew Yang, and Michael Bloomberg, who all ran against Biden during the primaries.
I'm encouraging everybody who was part of my campaign to join me because we have found that leader in Vice President, soon to be President, Joe Biden.
In Delaware, I'm Nadia Romero.
And we are carrying the PBS NewsHour coverage of the Democratic National Convention on K1, KPBS. We will also carry next week's Republican National Convention. The upcoming flu season is adding a new worry as Americans continue to face the coronavirus. Now, a new study suggests flu and maybe even other viruses can spread on dust particles. Mandy Gaither explains.
Flu season and COVID-19 are about to collide.
Their symptoms will be hard to distinguish from COVID symptoms.
Both are contagious respiratory illnesses, but are caused by different viruses. It's already known that these viruses can spread through droplets in the air and from touching infected surfaces. But a new study suggests the flu and potentially other viruses, like the coronavirus, may be carried on small particles of dust that float in the air. The research published in the journal Nature Communications determined animals could infect one another in a lab through the virus on their fur, and dried tissue soaked with the virus could send off potentially infectious particles through the air when they are crumpled, adding another layer of concern as health officials are already bracing for flu season amid the pandemic, especially when it comes to virus detection, says former U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy.
Because of the challenges, the ongoing challenges we have with testing capacity, it may take us a while to figure out whether the person who has a fever actually has COVID or something else, which means that more people will be isolated for longer and also means it will be harder to keep schools and workplaces open.
For today's Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
The FDA has approved the world's first fully transparent surgical mask. They're made by Clear Mask. As an American medical supply company, traditional surgical masks block mouths, which can sometimes impede effective communication. Well, the company says this mask still offers a high level of protection. They're sold online at buyclearmask.com. The nonprofit Veterans Village has a new president and CEO after Kim Mitchell left in November. The organization, which created Stand Down, runs programs for drug treatment and the homeless. The new president and CEO of Veterans Village, Akila Templeton, sat down with KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh.
Akila Templeton, you're the new president and CEO of Veterans Village. You're the first non-veteran to run Veterans Village. A venerable organization. It's been around, founded by Vietnam vets. What made you decide to spend your life working with veterans?
Over the course of my career, I've worked with several populations who have experienced homelessness, who have experienced poverty and hunger. But the veteran piece, I think, just really struck a chord with me because of the irony there. Right, and
that irony is what?
For me, the irony is just in, the reality that we actually have homeless veterans in America.
Are you able to do everything? Drug treatment, outreach to homeless? Are you able to keep every one of your programs up and running right now?
I think that we are doing what we can, the best that we can, and so I think there are certain elements of all of those things that you've mentioned that have certainly survived. We are doing outreach, we are, providing groups, but we're doing it differently. And so we may not have a situation where you can have, 10, 20, 30 veterans in a space, but we're finding ways to do it.
You were running a temporary shelter on Point Loma that's since shut down. Are we going to see this Veterans Village changing? Are we going to see a new direction in the next few years?
Well, certainly I think all organizations experience some level of change and evolution, right? And that's a good thing, right? It just means that the needs are changing, the demands are changing, and it's up to us to adapt. Does that take time? Yes. Were we already headed down that road? Yes. But then the unexpected happened, right? COVID happened, and so it may take us a little longer.
So there are a number of veterans that are housed right now over at the convention center because of COVID-19. Yeah. What role are you playing in trying to get a more permanent situation for those veterans?
Yeah. So very soon I'll take my first visit down to the convention center to actually see what's happening firsthand. But I can tell you that even though this is only week 3, that was actually my priority coming into the door. And so we've been working diligently over the past couple weeks to collaborate with other agencies, with landlords. We're looking at some of our programs, and we think that we have some pretty solid options for moving some of our veterans from the temporary shelter environment into permanent housing.
And what's the biggest impediment there? Do you have enough landlords who are willing to take those vets?
Well, I think the challenges are the same everywhere, right? There is a low inventory of affordable housing. There are eligibility requirements. There's bureaucracy and paperwork and all of that. And so each situation is different. We are certainly looking at each case, each
And here's another look at today's top stories. San Diego County is now in its third day of being off the state's coronavirus monitoring list. If the county stays off of the list for 14 days, then schools can reopen. So far, 27 elementary schools and districts have received a waiver from the county to allow in-person teaching. Francis Parker School is one of them, and they plan to partially open on September 8th. And a state appeals court has granted an emergency stay that will prevent a midnight shutdown of Uber and Lyft service. San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer was among those calling for a stay. The rideshare companies recently lost a court battle regarding AB 5, with a judge ruling the companies must classify their drivers as employees rather than independent contractors. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. And thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.